This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman.
And Abby Lucas.
We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of creativity.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
On each episode, we examine the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
We aren't. Find us online at artofdarkpod.com, and please support the show through Patreon or Substack. You get extra stuff. Thank you.
We love a prepared guest.
We do. We love our prepared guest. We're back in the dark room. I'm Kevin Kautzman. This is Art of Darkness. My good friend and colleague, Abby Lucas, is here. Abby, how are you?
Hello.
Yes.
I'll get into it later, but I'm a little bit sad. But we can talk about that in a while.
Yeah, we'll make a little space for that in a minute. You've brought one of your friends and colleagues from UK film, from London Film onto the pod, Rob Ayling. We're going to talk Hitchcock. Rob, welcome to Art of Darkness. Welcome to the Dark Room. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be in the dark room. Thank you very much. Although surprisingly, it's very bright where you are, so kind of contrast.
Very bright. Doesn't smell of fix.
But thank you.
Yeah, right. Well, we will make a lot of time to talk about you, your work, and your interest in Hitchcock. You know, your influences. We just watched this outstanding short film you have, Punching Bag. I want to talk all about that. I know Abby has something she wants to cover right here at the top. But before we hand it over to her, Rob, you're a filmmaker. Where can people find you and your work right away?
So people can find me on Instagram. Rob Ayling, it's Ayling, or on my website at simply robailing.com.
Ayling. Rob Ayling. Yeah, Ayling.com. All right, and we'll come back in a moment. But Abby, I know you have a bit of a eulogy to offer us here. Go ahead.
I do. I have a bit of a eulogy. So the head of department for the film school / drama school that I attended back when I was young, died recently. And he was also recently, it was yesterday. He was also a titan of New Zealand theatre. So I am going to just tell you a little biography of the man, and then make a little tribute myself afterwards. So his name was Raymond Hawthorne, Raymond Benjamin Thomas Hawthorne, and who was awarded with an ONZM. He was born in 1936, died yesterday, 6th of April, 2025, or today. So yesterday in New Zealand, but today everywhere else. And he was a New Zealand theatre director, regarded as one of the country's most senior performing arts practitioners. He grew up in the Hawke's Bay, where he used to ride a horse to school. The school was called Paki Paki School, now Te Kura Paki Paki, and he went to high school in Hastings. At age 5, he won a primary school singing competition that was judged by Emma Natske, the mother of the Russian New Zealand opera singer Oscar Natske. And he also performed community opera and with theatrical companies. He became a member of the New Zealand Players, which was the nation's first national sort of major professional theatre company, directed by Richard Campion, who's Jane Campion's father. And in 1957, he was given a government bursary to go to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts over here.
That's a good school.
Very good school. But he came back to New Zealand and had a career as a performer, but also moved towards directing and teaching, and started a theatre company called Theatre Corporate, which I think employed around 30 actors full time for I would say a good decade or so. So he built a real community of performers in Auckland. He became the head of the major of directing and writing for screen and theatre at the Unitec Institute of Technology, where I studied in 1997, and was appointed head of the school in 2003. And he acted in many, many plays with the Auckland Theatre Company, including The Judas Kiss, Waiting for Godot, which I saw, Midsummer Night's Dream, The Crucible, and Sir Roger Hall's Who Wants to Be 100, as well as directing many, many plays for them as well. And he got his Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit during the 2000 Queen's Birthday honours. He leaves behind his ex-wife, Elizabeth Hawthorne, and his daughter, Emmeline Hawthorne, and he survived his other daughter, Sophia Hawthorne, who sadly died of suicide a few years previous.
Oh no. Oh boy.
Yeah,
That's got to be hard.
it was really tough for the community as well. I directed Sophia in an excerpt of Private Lives for one of my
Your projects.
projects at school. Yeah. And I also directed Emmeline in another project, which was a piece of new theatre. And Elizabeth was still is a great actress in New Zealand, and also had a profound influence on me as a practitioner as well. She taught many classes at Uni Tech as well. One of my favorite stories of Raymond Hawthorne, because he was a temperamental man. There are a few actors at drama school who are probably still traumatized to this day by well, he was from that era of shouty directors that would say cruel things.
Sure. Okay.
Cool. But it was never ever long running sort of like beef, I guess. One of my favorite stories of a run-in that I had with Raymond Hawthorne was in my first year at university. Do you remember the episode of Seinfeld where George's answering machine message was a song?
Right. George isn't at home. Please leave a message at the beep.
So that was my answering machine message for a good 6 months, like that recording from Seinfeld. Amazing. And I remember he rang me one time and left a message on my answering machine saying, "Darling, what the hell is this shit on your answering machine? It's so unprofessional. Get yourself a proper answering machine message and call me back. It's Raymond.
Amazing.
Fuck you."
One of us. One of us. Amazing.
So there are a lot of people with stories like that. My other story was that he was directing a production of The Crucible with the third year actors, and the directing and writing class were allowed to sit in on the rehearsals to see how the process went. And it was just before the tech rehearsal. Everyone was gathered into the theater, and he was just sort of, asking questions of everybody, kind of like a little warm up before they actually started the tech. And he said, he threw out as a question to the actors, "Has anyone looked up the meaning of their character's name?" And the girl who was playing Abigail put her hand up and said something. I don't know what she said the meaning of it was, but I was like, "That's not what it means." And she's like, "But I've researched it, rah, rah, rah." And Raymond goes, "Oh, fuck you, darling. It's her name. I think she probably knows what it means."
All right. Well, shall we say rest in peace?
We will, and we are going to do that. If you will indulge me, I am just going to say a short karakia to say goodbye to a man who had a profound effect on me as an artist. Just one moment.
Take all the time you need, Abby.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Okay. Haere atua rai te rangatira. Haere atu ki tua o te arai. Ki te o kia kinga mutunga kore. Ki te wākainga tuturu mo tātou. Haere, haere, haere atura. Ko mātou e tangi nei. E maumahara ana ki o mahi rangatira. O e kōrero. O tō hui te ara. E kore koe I ware tia. Mo e maira. Mo e maira. Moe Maira te rangi Marie.
Huh. What does that mean, Abby? You gonna
It's
translate it
it's
for
not
us?
as it's not as pretty in English.
Well, that's all right. We could let it sit. But Abby, that was very moving. Thank you. And maybe we'll make, I don't know how you feel about this, but we can make more space for that after a year if you want to let it sit. We could maybe do a
I don't know if we have enough for that,
okay.
but
That's all
yeah.
right. Well, in any event, that's amazing. This fellow has a Wikipedia article, and we talk a little bit about it's maybe a little corny, but we talk about theater royalty, and it's a real thing, and it it's a there's something quixotic about the whole practice, right? This man played make believe for a living, and taught other people to do it as adults, and so did the subject of our darkroom today, Hitchcock. And
Hitchcock.
of course, these dark rooms, our guests, they go through our back catalog and they say, "I want to talk about this guy," and we're going to make room for that. But let's get Rob back in here. And thanks again, Abby. That was very cool. I'm gonna read more about this fellow. There's that generation. There's not going to be another like that. That when
No.
those guys go, it's over, and something new's coming. But let me segue into Rob's short film that we just watched. It's behind a
Yeah.
password, so I regret to tell you you can't go and watch it. Although I think Rob probably has other work that you can go watch, and I want to hear all about it. But Rob, you have a short that's very powerful and kinetic called Punching Bag, which is about a boxer over in the UK, and it juxtaposes his domestic situation with his with a boxing with training and everything, and obviously the mind immediately goes to Raging Bull and Rocky and films of that nature. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about Punching Bag and your background as a filmmaker? Let's get to know you a little bit. I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. So the best way that I can sum up Punching Bag in a nutshell is, as you rightly said, one of the references already. It is Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull meets Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan,
Ah,
and that was the pitch. That was
okay.
essentially the pitch that I gave to anyone that ever wanted to know what this film was about. That was literally it in a nutshell. Um, but in terms of the actual origin stories of this, it all stems from Michael Adji, the lead actor. So he is a amateur boxer with I believe, an undefeated record still, even to this day. And
Oh
he
wow.
told my friend who was on another podcast about this story of him struggling with his own mental health and well-being, not just as an actor but as a boxer as well, and how he used boxing as a means of combating those struggles, but also inflicting pain on himself.
Mm,
So when I heard that, I had to immediately talk to him and dive in further about what he really meant by that even further, and we just had a very open discussion. And I'll be completely honest with you, and I don't mean it to be in such a blasé way, but it's very difficult for people, generally speaking, to talk about their own mental health and well-being, generally
Mm,
speaking, anyway. But I
mm,
think it is more so for men, I would say, because of what this perception of what is a man, what is this, what is that. They're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to be this, that, and the other. And here we are, two guys talking to one another. I'm in the end in tears because he says one sentence which really struck me to a core, which was, I was willing to let one punch end it all. And
mm,
I've been there.
yeah. Wild.
I've been there sadly a few times in my life. And
Sure.
that resonated with me so much so that I I felt compelled to tell this story, his story, and then over time through various drafts, I realized if I'm to get into that mindset, into that space, I have to throw myself within that as well. And I think,
mm,
personally speaking, as my own philosophy within film making anyway, the more personal, the more authentic, and the more you
Hmm.
essentially at the core of it, you get to um, get a deeper meaning of what it is you're trying to say. And actually, I don't think a lot of people realize this when they're doing it anyway, but you either are throwing your ideas in there of who you are and what you see reality and what life is to be, or you don't. And for me, with any project I go into, at the core, I have to be thrown in there in some capacity.
So in this project, are you inside of this story?
So where I am, I'm clearly the boxer. No, no, I am.
Sure, sure.
No,
All right.
no, no. Can't you tell? Can't you tell? Although I will come back to that one point actually about the boxing side of things. But generally speaking, everything that you see to do with again, this will make sense when people see it, of course, and you two have seen it, of
Mm.
course. But everything between the relationship between the mother and Elijah is very much my own story. So
Mm.
I have to stress this very quickly as well. I am a product of a single parent upbringing,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and my mother is the greatest human being I've ever known in my life, and she's one of the strongest people I've ever met.
Mm.
However, uh, when grief strikes, you don't know how
Sure.
to handle things,
Yep.
especially
Mm.
when it's your best friend, your husband in this case, and to lose somebody in such a shocking manner,
Hmm.
Mm.
um, you don't know where to turn, you don't know what to do and what to say and how to react within
Of course.
the moment, and you can only turn to a substance, an addiction of
Sure.
some sort.
Mm.
And so that was my mum's substance. And to tie it back with the film itself, for me, the film is ultimately what is a punching bag to you.
Mhm.
And in the case of Elijah and the mum, the punching bag is her own son. And
Mm.
Sure.
for Elijah, it's himself, it's everything else around him. So that at the
Yeah.
core is something I want the audience to be able to open up and ask themselves, what is that punching bag to them? And in the making of this film, and it sounds so strange to say this even now, because despite what what my surroundings say, I have been doing this for about 15 years. And
All
I
right.
only realized until now that making films really is my punching bag. That is
Mm.
my
Ah,
way of
Mm.
sewing up the wounds that open up. And whenever things get opened in reality, that's how I close things in. I can never really um and as difficult as might seem to believe as well, and Abby will probably understand this more so because I'm a bit of a anyway, I'm doing it now, overthinking, but
Yeah.
I struggle to communicate.
mm.
I generally struggle really to communicate how I feel in and through Michael's case, it's not just through his acting, but it's also through boxing. And
Mhm.
one of the things I ended up doing in preparation for this film was actually take up boxing myself.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Mm.
I
I'm
think you
not
would
a
want to. Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm not a I'm not a champion. Yeah, but to get into
Not
that
yet.
mindset, and if I'm asking an actor to, not yet, not yet, yeah, if I'm asking an actor to get in that space, that square space, to throw themselves in there, to physically and
Mm.
mentally drive them in that space, it would be fair as well, both in the sport and the craft that he's doing as an actor, to throw myself in there and understand what it means to be in that space.
Yeah. And to
And
take a punch.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
trust me, man. Yeah, to take a punch
Yeah. I don't, those days are over for me,
as
God
well.
willing.
And yeah,
Rob, I don't mean to pry.
no, you used to box as well.
No, 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 no. I used no, 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 no. I did some boxing workouts. Boxing workouts are incredible. If you're
Mm.
looking for
Oh,
just for
mm,
for fitness, boxing's amazing.
oh,
No, no. But I've been punched in the mouth a few times. I got a big mouth, Rob.
mm.
I've got a podcast. But I was much younger. Rob, I don't mean to pry, but how old were you
Mm.
when your father passed?
So my father passed away when I was 5 years old.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, there is a little bit of a story in regards to what happened up to, if I may.
Of course.
Sure.
Um, so the best way that I can sum up my quote unquote origins of how I became a filmmaker or how I decided I wanted
He says in his Batman hat.
was what I've now kind of coined the exactly.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
branding's on point, man. What can I say? What can I say?
Right, yeah.
Um, um, so I would coin this as like basically 11 days. So on day one, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer. And the
Mm,
very first thing he did was he went to bed. He didn't get out of bed until day five, day six, which was when my mum went to him and said, "You're taking your son to go and see this film, which you promised him for
mm,
Hmm.
for so long. He's been pestering you, this and that and the other." First time I ever went to the cinema on day five, day six,
Wow.
and I grew up in East London, so I actually grew up just outside of Leytonstone, so Walthamstow, Leytonstone. So
The
that kind of ties in
Hitchcock
with what we're going to talk about a bit
connection.
later on.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and exactly, exactly. And I went to the cinema, and for 81, 82 minutes, I completely forgot that my father was dying of cancer and that my
mm,
mother was gonna become a single parent.
Hmm.
mm.
And by the end of the screening, I turned to my family and I said, "I want to be Buzz Lightyear."
Ah,
And in that moment, I I was completely swept away by the moment of two characters who are fighting against one another in this grand epic adventure.
Mhm.
This Toy Story, as it were.
yeah, sure.
And
Great
um,
film. A great film.
and then sadly on, oh, it's an amazing film. It's an
Yeah.
amazing film. And then sadly on day 11, my father died.
Wow.
And
So
there's
fast.
two things I learned. Um, there's two lessons I learned in that moment, which is one, life is short and unexpected to turn. It can
Hmm.
turn in an instant like that. And
Mm,
that secondly, the power of storytelling can take you out of your own reality and take you somewhere else in a safe zone to
mm,
just forget about everything that's going on. And for a child, that's a gift.
mm,
And for anyone that's a storyteller right now, it's a responsibility. And I'm not saying, by the way, when I was 5 years old, I turned around and said, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this for life,"
yeah.
and this, that, and the other. That came over time in university and studying
Yeah.
philosophy. So, yeah, yeah. But um, I then, um, yeah, over time, I realized it's a gift to be a storyteller, and it's a huge amount of responsibility to be able to um, tell a story on the largest format possible and to be able to allow audiences to escape the own realities of tough times
Hmm.
and be able to say it's either
Sure.
okay or listen up, there needs more to be done, or however else you want to tell that story. But
Hmm.
that is that's the power of cinema for me, and that's what it means to me.
All right. Great. Well, we're gonna pivot and talk a little bit about Hitchcock in a minute. I want you to be able to, before we do, I want you to be able to talk maybe a little bit about some of the films that people can actually go and watch. Now, I'll confess, Rob, I lost my father when I was just 4, and I studied philosophy. So I
Mm.
feel an immediate kinship with you, and
Oh,
we'll take it
oh,
offline
okay.
sometime. But I understand what some of what you went through, and it's interesting on this pod. We always talk
Mm,
about we have bingo cards, that somebody made for us for the first few seasons, and one of the marks on the bingo card was, dead parent, young for artists. There's something about that
yeah,
experience that
yeah.
drives people. One thing, you want to control the world and you want to remake the world,
Mm,
so you can sort of process what
Mm,
you've been through. But in any event, Rob, I really appreciate you sharing that, and that
absolutely.
that intimacy and that but I don't want people to get the impression that Punching Bag is some sort of a confessional thing. It's not, it's not like Rob is sort of slitting his wrists and bleeding on the film, but it's in there and you can feel that it's
No,
in there.
no.
It's coming from a real place.
Mm,
And so thank you so much for sharing
mm.
and your candor. That's really intense. What so you have I was reading your biography. You have how many Batman hats do you have? 65 Batman hats, apparently.
It's the funny thing is that there might be actually more than that now. That's the really worrying
Oh.
thing. It's like you've just made me realize that first I need to update my bio. First of all, I need to just do that, and then secondly, maybe I do need to
More
recount the
hats.
hats.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
More
so
hats.
is
I
there
mean,
I
is
have a
I
there a
problem.
yeah, go ahead, Abby.
I know I was going to say just knowing Rob and having watched a lot of his back catalog, I mean including Punching Bag we watched today. You don't shy away
Mhm.
from the big emotional themes in your work at all, which is a
Mm.
compliment, I think. Um, what looking at the films that you've made previous, what do you think defines you as a filmmaker?
That's a really good question. What defines me? Do you know what? I don't want to sound too corny as I say it, but I'm actually going to say something that my friend said to me recently, which is um probably the word hope.
Hmm.
Probably the word hope would actually define the work that I've done recently. In particular, the last I'd say the last three films that I've done. So Punching Bag, my micro short documentary Hands, and definitely Living in Crime Alley.
Hmm.
Whether they inspire hope or they bring out this idea what hope is. In some capacity, hope is one of the defining themes throughout those three films in particular. Actually, and to some extent, actually, listen to me as well. I
Hmm.
would say that that would be one of the defining, of the films that I've done. Yeah.
And
Yes, I'd have to
tell
ponder
us
that again myself.
No, I think that's a great answer. Tell us a little bit about the ones that people can find online to watch.
So the films that people can check out online on my website are so there's my graduation film which I did at Film School called Listen to Me, which is a short drama slash thriller in the style of Rear Window meets The Conversation. It's a film about domestic violence and about a musicologist that suspects her next door neighbor's in an abusive relationship. So she uses her sound
Mm.
recording equipment to investigate what's going on next door. And then um, you can also check out an episode that I directed of Now, the A24 BBC television series Dreaming Whilst Black. It was
Mm.
a web series which then became the A24 show. So that's on there as well. Really, really great TV series if you haven't checked it out. So I'd highly recommend that. And then the other two that are on there is one is Hands, which is a micro short documentary about my mum's um, loss of the use of her hands during the pandemic because she sadly suffered a stroke
Mm.
just as the pandemic hit.
Oh,
So
oh,
she
what
started to lose.
awful
Yeah,
timing. Yeah.
yeah.
Oof.
It was. It was a tough time, and for everyone, I should say. Um, and I would say, in that moment, again, coming back to what I was saying before about communication, it was difficult for me to open up. And the only way that I was able to open up was just through this expression of film. And
Mm.
so for some people, it is a reality that they keep um, going for ages. But for people that just watching for this little micro moment, it's 90 seconds. And that at its core, what it needed to be.
Mm.
And then the other one, of course, which explains the branding and probably what I'm best known for, and I don't mind being the guy that brought Batman to Bristol, I'll be honest with you. I don't mind that at all, but it's a fan film called Living in Crime Alley, and it's um a film about a single father trying to bring up their daughter in one of the most deprived areas in Gotham City, known as um Park Row slash Crime Alley, which is where Bruce Wayne's parents were murdered. And it's
Sure.
about the idea of can we bring hope to an otherwise hopeless city, as it were,
Mm.
and whether or not Batman's actually doing any good or not, basically.
Hmm. All right.
So those are
Well,
the
check
films
it.
that you can
Mhm. Yeah,
check
go
out
check it all out at
and
Rob
get a
Ayling. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, robailing dot com, Ayling. All right, let's talk about Hitchcock a little bit here. I've got some stuff for the After Dark. We'll save that for after the break for the patrons. We always appreciate y'all. We're on the After Dark. We're going to talk a little bit of behind the scenes stuff about the Birds, Marnie. We'll talk about some lesser known gems, and we're going to talk about his heroines a little bit. So we'll save all of that for later. Patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod. Thank you. Let's see now. So I wanted just for people who don't remember Hitchcock, right? You don't, whatever. We're just going to situate him in time. He was born August 13th, 1899 in London, in Leytonstone. Was he born in Leytonstone? I have to look again. It's been a
Can you
minute.
be born in Leytonstone? Let's have a look. You go ahead. I'll check it out.
Yeah, yeah, go find it, Abby. Yeah, it says he was born in Leytonstone, Essex. Okay, all right,
Okay.
great. So we know that. So 1899, which is wild, right? You think about
Mm.
1899 and how now his films are considered, they're so current. You put on Rear Window and it will suck everyone in the room into it. Like if anybody,
Mm.
if you can't watch 5 minutes of Rear Window. I've never been able. I can't. It's all or nothing with Hitchcock. He was raised by strict Catholic parents. He experienced a notorious police station punishment where
Oh
he was
yeah,
put in jail. They put the fear in him, and
the
he
fear.
always carried that with him. And he was obese as a child, and so he had a lot of issues. He entered the film industry in 1920, which, I mean, it's just started, right?
Mm.
And he was designing title cards. That's how he started. He was a designer. And then he gained some prominence in silent film. And it says he did Britain's first talkie, Blackmail. And then he built his reputation in the UK film industry with the 39 Steps, The Man Who Knew Too Much. And then he went to Hollywood, where he made Rebecca, which won Best Picture. And then he was off to the races and had one of the greatest careers. But he clearly had a dark side,
Mm.
and he mistreated his actresses very famously, and he was obsessed with women. It was not entirely benign. Let's get Rob back in here. So, Rob, you've mentioned one Hitchcock film, Rear Window. Uh, just tell us
Mm.
what Hitchcock means to you as a filmmaker, and what your top, I guess your top three are, maybe. Yeah.
Mm. So, Abby's heard this story already, so she'll be hearing it again. But I've got another story to tell.
It's a good
Um,
story.
so I think it's really sweet. I think it's really sweet. So not long after my father passed away, my best friend basically was my grandfather,
Mm.
and so from my side of the family, so I'm half Indian, half British, and from my mum's side, my granddad was like like a best friend to me. And his English was incredibly limited, like
Mm.
very limited, like literally a yes, no, hello, goodbye, or probably another word which I won't repeat because I don't think I can
Right.
say it.
Yeah,
Anyway, but
well,
the point
mm.
is, yeah. Um, um, so one day he sat me down and he said he stuck a film in from a VHS into the VHS player and just went, "You watch now." I was like, "Okay," and we're watching this film. And by the end of it, he goes, right, what's it about? And I said, well, it's a guy in a wheelchair. He's got a broken leg. And there's all this kissy stuff with Grace Kelly
Just Grace Kelly.
and he's
Yeah.
It's
expecting his
just
next door. Yeah. Yeah.
And
There's a
Grace
murder that's
Kelly
going
is
on
pursuing
across it.
him. It's
yeah.
Yeah.
that meme, babe, please, I'm so horny. I mean, she is just the living embodiment of that meme, and it's disorienting. Anyway, I talked over you. Sorry, Rob.
Yeah. That's okay. It's okay. Sorry, I'll quickly say though, one of my favorite memes of that film though is oh, I bet he's thinking about other women, and then it's just
Yeah,
James
that is
Stewart saying,
big,
"Why would somebody go out 3 times?"
yeah,
Yeah.
big ballot camera. He's just
I
spying.
love it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Why
so
would
good.
anyone go out 3 times in one night and 3 times back?
Oh,
Yeah.
just and just it's
But
just a
yeah,
perfect example too of like a
so
set as
yeah,
a character. Yeah, Rob, go on.
Mm.
yeah. And so yeah, the film was Rear Window, and I didn't realize at the time, but only years later did I realize what my grandfather was trying to do, which is we may not all speak the same language, but cinema is a universal language.
Mm.
And that is easily the greatest lesson I have ever been taught when it comes to filmmaking. And to kind of tie this quite nicely with Abby's lovely tribute to her teacher, to have a teacher like that to teach you something so powerful at a young age or at any age like that, it's a gift. So I owe a lot to my grandfather to introducing me to Hitchcock at a very young age. And I mean, whoever you ask, maybe he shouldn't have introduced Rear Window to an 8-year-old, but who knows? I thought it was perfectly fine.
Sure.
I
Well, and of course,
and look, here we
It,
are
it
now.
turned
Here
out
we are
well.
now
Yeah.
talking about
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that. But what I love about that is that you can keep asking that question. What is Rear Window about? Right?
Mm.
It's about kind and it's
Mm,
like all great art. It changes as you change. As you mature,
yeah.
you're going to see Rear Window in a different way, and it's just perfect like that.
Mm.
I remember my mother. There was a blizzard once in North Dakota where I grew up, and this was back in the day. You'd go to the video store, and I must have been 10 or 11. My mother said, "Go get The Shining." We're gonna watch
Your
The Shining.
mother?
Yes, yes, yes. And we watched The Shining, and and now I have a teenage daughter. She wasn't 11; she was a little older. And I said, we're going to watch The Shining, and we watched The Shining. And I remember my teenage daughter; she must have been 13 or 14. After it was over, she looked at us and she said, "What just happened?" And I go, "I don't know. You're going to have to watch it 50 more times, aren't you? You're going to have to go back into that maze over and over again." Abby.
I have a slight trauma where a new film called Eyes Wide Shut came on the television, and I was like, Kubrick,
Oh,
he's supposed to be a genius. My parents were like, okay, well, we'll sit down and watch it. I have so many regrets.
Well, and you probably watched the version that did not have, because in the American version, they put a bunch of silhouettes in front of the fucking,
Oh,
frankly,
well, I mean,
because Americans are
this was on
prudes.
television, so it
Okay.
probably was the prude version. But
Sure,
yeah,
sure. What an incredible,
17
what an
years old
awkward
watching
film to
Eyes Wide
watch.
Shut with your parents, not a good idea.
Oh, no. How awkward. What a
that's
masterpiece,
incredible.
though. What an incredible film.
I
Rob,
love it.
let's talk a little bit more about Hitchcock. Are
Mm,
there a couple of other immediate films that come to mind? I've got
mm.
something for the After Dark. It's sort of 10 gems, and we'll save that. We'll talk about some of the more maybe obscure Hitchcock. But what are the ones that immediately come to mind to you, and why?
Um, so without question, like when we're talking Hitchcock, you can't not talk about, in my opinion, easily the very first James Bond movie, which is North by Northwest. Because for
Incredible.
me, that is the first Bond movie. It's the
Hmm.
first unintentional Bond movie, and I there's so much to North by Northwest, which is genius and absolute absurdity to its finest. Like we lost one of the greats earlier in the year that would say absurdity is the most wonderful and most, fantastical. And there are so many things in North by Northwest which are just so implausible. But the thing is, oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah. We'll read
Um,
catching. We're reading
there are
Catching
so
the
many
Big Fish
things
on every
about
After
North
Dark.
by
Yeah.
Northwest.
Go on, Rob.
Oh, okay, fair, fair, fair,
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much absurdity in North by Northwest, which is like, and this is the genius about Hitchcock, which is there is that phrase, which is an overused one, which is drama is life with the dull bits cut out. And
Mm.
no better example of that is in North by Northwest, because the absurdity of being mistaken and just like these in so many intelligent characters just thinking he's a spy straight away just because he put his hand up and things like that. It's just, and then the crop dust sequence with the plane flying into the tanker, even though the tanker is right there, so it doesn't need to move. It's just ridiculous, and it's fun. It's brilliantly told, and to have someone like Cary Grant and Eve Marie Saint, who are just so like their chemistry is infectious, and I've probably said this enough already, but like I'll say it again. Like North by Northwest is pure escapist cinema for me, and I think it's genius.
Yeah.
I
One thing I
think
often
from start
say.
to finish is just
Mhm.
absolute joy.
Oh, it's wonderful. And as an American from Flyover, from Crop Duster land, I
Mm.
love that an Englishman had to come and show us America that way. It's very true.
Mm. That's
Only an
true. No,
Englishman
that's true.
could see
That's
America the
true.
way that Hitchcock saw it, and
Mm.
uh, and then there's so much wit in it too. I mean, isn't that at
Mm.
the end the train goes into the tunnel? I mean, talk about on the nose and just calling Dr. Freud so wonderful. I looked something up from Screen Rant right here. Um, Apparently, obviously we consider the crop duster scene to be one of the most defining moments, but apparently he ate a lot of criticism because, of course, people know the crop duster scene. I'm going to read a little bit. Thornhill arrives at a meeting spot, a bus stop in the middle of a Midwestern farmland. Thornhill soon discovers that he's been led into a trap, which, of course, this is echoed in Seven, right? Seven completely rips off this scene. As a crop duster flies over him, nearly riddling him with gunfire from one of its passengers, Thornhill causes the plane to crash during one of its strafing runs. But audiences have ridiculed the famous scene for decades, pointing out that there are far simpler and more efficient ways to assassinate Thornhill. Vandeman, the spy, could have orchestrated a drive-by shooting or had his assassins meet Thornhill at the bus stop and kill him there and then. Hitchcock famously hand-waved these criticisms by saying that viewers would forgive such an illogical assassination attempt due to the excitement of the scene, which is proven to be correct. The iconic scene is not entirely illogical, however, as the crop duster prevents Thornhill from hiding in the cornfields, something that would complicate a simple assassination method. What does that say about filmmaking and the poetry of film, Rob, that we surrender to something that's on its face absurd because it's pure Kino? What does it say about what we want from film?
I think it. Do you know what I think it says ultimately is that we just want that pure escapism, and
Mm.
there are, and sometimes I just even I remember when I was at film school, fun enough, and my directing tutors would say to me, "Oh, make sure it's as believable and as this and this and this as possible." And I would always say to them back at them, but like, if we keep doing this, it will literally be an hour of us just doing like, say for example, I think the scene that I was talking about at the time was okay, so if this was a believable reality, then this person would be doing a shitload of paperwork for the police anyway.
Mm.
And then they make fun of it in Hot Fuzz, for example. You know, then then in that case, then we're just gonna completely, just show them the realities of now. Whereas people are more fixated on pure escapism, not reality, as it were. And we have to remember at the end of the day, and I'll never forget this lesson, funny enough, which is even when you're making a drama, it's still a fantasy.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, you are the helm of that world. The writer, the director, the creatives, everyone involved within that. It's ultimately a fantasy anyway. So in the realms of this world, um, that is the plausible thing that's going to happen. And if we're going down into plausibility here, if someone's going to turn around to me and say, "Oh, there's no such thing as a talking raccoon," I would disagree. I've seen talking raccoons, and it's on that screen, so I'm going to suspend my
Sure.
disbelief in that way. So if we're
Sure.
going to keep talking about like disbelief and all that stuff, I mean, obviously, I digress, but yeah,
But we also don't go to the water cooler to talk about the pedestrian, right? Like, it's always
yeah,
the wild stories, whether it be cinema, TV, the news. Like, no interesting sort of
mm,
conversation comes out of something that's very normal, or like the easiest way to kill somebody, or like, oh well, wasn't that an efficient death that man had? Like, it's just not interesting.
Well, I mean, and I think it's sort of fundamentally we're talking about the conceit of realism in narrative art, right?
mm,
Like, I really don't think it exists. I think as soon as there's a fourth wall, we're abandoning anything real. And
Hmm.
that's what we come for, And even the
mm,
simulation of kind of the real is, of course, just a simulation. It's funny too with Hitchcock, like that scene. We know Thornhill isn't going to die. This is not Psycho.
mm.
Like if he was to die at that moment, the movie ends, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like Jaws as the perfect vehicle for drama, right? And North by Northwest, I mean Hitchcock clearly influenced Spielberg, perhaps the mo.
Although in Psycho our protagonist died and the movie didn't end.
That's what I'm saying. That's why Psycho was so
mm,
shocking, right? But I don't think there's any world by where in North by Northwest Thornhill dies and the movie continues. I
Right.
don't think there's anything structurally that where that would, right? But it's like Jaws is so perfect because the shark dies and the movie's over. The movie is the shark, right? I love that.
mm, mm.
Um, Rob, beyond North by Northwest, is there another prime Hitchcock that you're inspired by or you want to talk about?
I mean, we you brought it up already, so I feel like I should choose another.
No, no. Are you talking about Rear Window?
Just to jump on it very quickly, what I will say, no, I was going to say Psycho because I think that whether or not it was intentional or not, what I will say is that I think that's the greatest trick or the
Mm.
greatest suspense that Hitchcock ever gave us, which is I made a film catalog of this many movies, and then you were expecting all of these things to be hit in a certain point and every this and every that, and then 35 minutes in, I'm gonna change the game of cinema by basically having um our lead actress Janet Leigh die at the 35th minute in a shower sequence with 78 different setup shots
Yeah.
intercutting and splicing. I think that's the greatest, like if someone were to say what's the scene that changed cinema, that's it. That's it right there. And it's the greatest trick he played for so long, whether or not that was intentional or not, of him
Mm.
thinking, do you know what, maybe in years time I'll just do this or whatever, because the fact of the matter is he was somewhat halted, I would say, and I say this carefully, he was halted by the Hays Code, I would say.
Yeah.
And to be able to get to a point at 1960 or 1959 to then make a sequence like that and say, do you know what? This is how we're seeing the game of storytelling moving forward. Because the fact is, TV's around. Everyone is
Mm.
being shocked by the images that they hear about on radio and the images that they will see. In fact, there's a great um, scene actually in the retelling of the making of Psycho in the film Hitchcock with Anthony Hopkins in the lead role, and he says at one point, "It's disgusting imagery, yes, but people can't stop looking."
Mm.
And that's where we are now in the game of cinema and in the game of in horror in particular. We can't stop watching. But the genius of that scene as well is there's no penetration.
Yeah.
It's the suggestive violence of that scene which really sells it. And you can't not talk about Hitchcock without talking about Rear Window, North by Northwest, or Psycho, because for me, uh, those are the moments that really changed and elevated the art that we love even further.
Hmm. And also you directed the play Rope,
Oh,
which Hitchcock,
I
famously made
I
did,
into a film,
love
yes.
Rope.
obviously.
Love
What
Rope.
what was it like to
Mm.
I don't know if you watched the film previously, but what was it like to return to it in its play form and have to work with the primary text?
So Rope was an interesting one for me because I knew going in that audiences would have two expectations of that story, which is the 1927 original text,
Hmm.
and of course the Hitchcock movie. And the one thing I would say about um, Hitchcock's Rope in particular is because he called it himself. He called Rope a failed experiment.
Mm.
I would disagree
I would disagree
respectfully
too.
of the man.
Yeah.
I would say I would say that Rope is a film that ran so Philip Barantini's Boiling Point or
Mm.
Adolescence could walk.
Yeah.
So for him, he was again ever changing the game and experimenting about the craft and that's on a technical level. But what's interesting about Rope in particular is it is the most Hitchcock film in many ways because it is very psychologically driven, but it's also trying to um, suggest at a relationship that's there, but we're not allowed to say because again, because he's bound by certain codes at the time. We're not allowed to
Mm.
talk about this. We're not allowed to talk about that. And what I ended up doing with my version of Rope was I set it in the 1960s, specifically 1963, the year before hangings in the UK were abolished. And so what I wanted to do was really address these two characters as openly in a relationship. So we
Mm.
had two guys literally in a relationship on the stage. And for me, what I find really interesting about Rope, which I don't think is actually brought up enough, is it's actually the story of an abusive relationship. It's a story about a guy that treats his other partner in the most horrific way. He bullies him, he hits him, he, you know, mentally um abuses him as well. And throughout the entire thing, the whole thing is about what is the Übermensch, Nietzsche's Superman theory. And to portray that in that space alone, um, I think and the way that Hitchcock did it is not only one incredibly cinematic in its own right, but it's also very um the right word I'm trying to think of here. It's very he makes it easy for people to understand, basically, is what I'm trying to say. He makes it accessible. There we go. Accessible. There's the
Mm.
word. And that was the thing I had to make sure to be able to do on the stage, which was to make all of the philosophical talk that's being addressed on the stage to be accessible to an audience that are coming there for just to have a good time. Because 9 times out of 10, people that come and watch theatre are there to just have a couple of drinks and have a good laugh and maybe take something away by the end. There to be, you know, pestered or let's say
Educated.
be taught anything
Educate.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of lot of
Yeah,
lot of
Or
exactly.
as
artists these
Educated.
days want to try to educate people. I don't go to the theater to get
or
educated.
or as our friend
Mm,
Blake said, they're not there to eat their vegetables.
yeah. Yeah. And I think the biggest challenge for me was just trying to make it as accessible as possible for two separate audiences, which was those that were familiar with the 1927 play
Mm.
and those that were familiar with the Hitchcock film in the 40s. So for me to set it a year before um, this change in the UK, which also was the big rise in 1960s pop culture. You had the rise of James Bond in movies. You had
Mm,
obviously
sure.
Psycho come out by then. You also had
Mm.
60s fashion. You had early rise in feminism as well. So for me, one of the biggest things I also had to change as well was because the original 1927 play, which is now up for grabs, you can actually do it as royalty free. It's now
Hmm.
public domain.
Hmm.
And one of the things I changed immediately was the depiction of Leela Arden, the character, because she's played as some dim-witted character that has no brain cells or whatever. It's the way it's described in the book. And I immediately said to the actress who plays Leela Arden in My Rope, I should say, and I said, "No, this is Diana Rigg. We're going to go, Avengers, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diana Rigg, James Bond woman, and play her as a very strong, independent feminist on the rise." And yeah, I think those were the biggest changes that I made to my interpretation of rope without having a camera, of course.
I think Rope is one of those hidden gems, right? I mean, if I'm
Mm.
listing Hitchcock work, I always
Mm,
include it. I love and then the sort of the gimmick of it. The 10, what is it, 10 shots, 10 minutes apiece. Then you get to play
mm,
the game where you try to figure out where he actually made the
The cut
cuts.
points. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very on the nose, but it's very
mm.
amusing. And how often do you have a movie that's about for like a philosophy professor who is complicit in murder accidentally by miseducating these spoiled brats who it's sort of it's a very
Mm.
today film, like so much of his work, where sort of theory cells take the L. Right? Let's put your theory into practice. Let's put
Yeah.
Nietzsche into
Mm.
practice and see where that gets us in the modern world. And of course, love the tension of it all and everything. Rob, we're going to wind down here in maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll take a quick break. We'll come back for the patrons on the After Dark. I've got a couple of articles. We're going to talk more about the hidden gems, and then I have an article from the Atlantic, "The Baffling Cruelty of Alfred Hitchcock," and we'll talk a little bit more about that and the sort of behind the scenes wickedness of Hitch on the set and all the rest of it. It's pretty well explored, but I think there's room on Art of Darkness to talk about uh, the way things used to be and the way things are now,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that tension in the kind of, I guess, the sort of sadomasochism that lurks underneath the creation of art and collaborative art. Rob, can I ask you? Why don't you tell people, what's coming next for Punching Bag? Is it going on the circuit? Is it going on the short film circuit? Where are people going to be able to find this in the sort of near and long term?
So Punching Bag is currently going on the film festival circuit. Hopefully fairly soon in terms of its first selection. We're still awaiting our first selection as we speak. But yeah, it will probably go on to do the film festival circuit for about a year, year and a half, and then eventually we'll um, release it in some capacity for a distributor's short film online platform or on Vimeo or something like that. But generally speaking, we will be having screenings fairly soon. So this was a film that was built for a big screen format,
Yeah, totally. You can see
and
it.
I hope, yeah, I oh, thank you, that's very kind. um, yeah, and I hope that we do get our first selection fairly soon. But yeah, in the meantime, it's a film which I've been talking about for nearly 2.5 years because that's how long it took, and I just hope that we do get that selection
Yeah, of
soon enough
course.
so people can come along and see it at
Yeah.
screenings.
Yeah. Well,
I will say
congratulations.
the opening shot I found to be very Hitchcockian.
Hmm. There's some rope in the opening shot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I was? It's yeah, it's almost like I planned that. No,
Yeah, it is a visual
that's very
metaphor.
sweet of you to say. Um, yeah, no, that's really sweet of you to say because I mean, I've always been a big believer in the opening shot of a film if it can tell your story in a nutshell. then then you're on to some form of winner. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
that means a lot that you've said that. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, and Rob, you're on your way to doing your first feature? Is that is that your hope?
That's the dream. That's certainly the dream. Absolutely. So I'm currently writing my first feature as we speak, but I'm also writing the second one as well, which is also I'm hoping to be a published graphic novel as well, because it delves
Oh,
into vigilantism and superhero genre. So that would be the second one, but the first one is a much more similar vein in Punching Bag, but more in a grounded kind of level, without going too much into it, but it's set in the hospitality industry, or specifically a coffee shop, which is what I used to work
yeah.
in the
Okay.
as part of the journey to being a film
Sure.
director. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, great. Well, if you want to direct a feature, or if you want to help produce, give money to Rob to direct his feature film about a coffee shop, find him online. We'll put a link to his Twitter in the show notes. Rob, you gonna come back for 20 or 30 minutes, do the After Dark with us? We'll talk a little more about Hitchcock's
Yes, of course.
Dark Side.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
Awesome. Abby,
absolutely.
thank you for arranging this. Rob, thanks for coming on. RobAyling.com. Go check it out. That short film is a banger. And so when it finally goes into release, make sure you look up Rob Ayling, Punching Bag, and follow this guy and his career. And Rob, don't forget us when they tap you to direct Batman in the future. Remember your friends.
Oh, mate, you'll be at the premiere. Don't worry. Don't worry. You'll be at the premiere.
Wonderful. In a hat.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back.